It's dark. So damn dark. But the moon is out tonight, a sliver of bone white hanging in the ink-black sky. It's not enough. It's never enough. The shadows here, they stretch. They breathe. I can't see it, but I know it's watching. I can feel its hunger, a cold, heavy pressure against my back. The same hunger I feel every time I wake up in this godforsaken place. The same silence that screams louder than any sound I've ever known. My name is Alex, and I think tonight is the night it finally catches me. The first time it happened, I thought it was a dream. A nightmare, to be precise. The kind that clings to you like sweat and dread long after you've woken up. I had gone to bed in my apartment in Chicago. The familiar city symphony of distant sirens and the low hum of traffic was my lullaby. I remember pulling the gray comforter up to my chin, my cat, Leo, purring on the pillow beside me. The last thing I saw before my eyes drifted shut was the glow of my alarm clock, 11:17 p.m. When I opened them again, it wasn't to the soft morning light filtering through my blinds. It was to an oppressive, dusty twilight. The air was thick, heavy with the scent of decay and dry rot, so different from the crisp, often polluted air of the city. I was lying on a cracked leather backseat of a car that hadn't seen the road in decades. A classic, maybe a Ford Falcon from the 60s. The stuffing was spilling out of the tears in the upholstery like dried guts. Panic, cold and sharp, stabbed at my chest. I sat up, my head swimming. Where the hell was I? This wasn't my bedroom. This wasn't my apartment. My heart hammered against my ribs, a frantic drumbeat in the suffocating silence. Outside the car's dirt-caked windows was a street, but not a street I recognized. It was a main street, the kind you see in old movies about small-town America. A single wide road flanked by two-story brick buildings. A faded sign on one read, Miller's Hardware. Another, with peeling paint, advertised Rosie's Diner, best pies in the county. But the windows of these establishments were dark, hollow eyes staring into nothing. Many were shattered, with jagged teeth of glass pointing inwards. Weeds, thick and triumphant, pushed their way through cracks in the sidewalk. A traffic light at the far end of the street was stuck on red, a single, unblinking crimson eye in the gloom. There were no people, no cars moving, no distant hum of life. The silence was absolute, a physical weight that pressed in on me. Hello? My voice was a croak, swallowed instantly by the vast emptiness. The sound was alien here, an intrusion. I scrambled out of the car, my boots crunching on loose gravel. My clothes were the same ones I'd worn to bed, a soft t-shirt and plaid pajama pants. Utterly inadequate for this place. A chill that had nothing to do with the temperature snaked up my spine. My phone, I needed my phone. I patted my pockets, the familiar ritual of a modern man in crisis. Nothing, of course. I walked down the middle of the street, a lone figure in a ghost town. Every step echoed unnaturally. Every gust of wind, rustling through the dead leaves piled against the buildings, sounded like a whisper. My mind was a whirlwind of questions. Was I kidnapped? Drugged? Was this some elaborate sick prank? But none of it made sense. There was a profound and unsettling wrongness to this place that went beyond a simple crime. It felt ancient, forgotten. That's when I heard it for the first time. A sound. It was distant but clear in the unnatural quiet. A scraping sound. Metal on concrete. It was slow, rhythmic. Scrape, pause, scrape, pause. The hairs on my arms stood on end. Every primal instinct in my body screamed at me to run, to hide. I ducked behind the rusted shell of the Falcon, peering over the hood. Down the street, from the deep shadows between the hardware store and what looked like a post office, a figure emerged. It was tall, unnaturally so. Its limbs were long and thin, moving with a jerky, disjointed gait. It was hunched over, dragging something behind it, something long and metallic. As it stepped into a patch of weak light from the dying sun, I saw that it was a length of rusted rebar, sharpened to a cruel point at one end. Scrape. The sound was closer now. I couldn't make out its face. It was shrouded in shadow, a void where features should have been. But I could feel its presence. It was a predator, and the silence of this town was its hunting ground. I was the prey. I didn't need any more convincing. I turned and ran. I ran without direction, my only goal to put distance between myself and that thing. I sprinted past the silent storefronts, my lungs burning, the taste of dust and fear in my mouth. I chanced to look back. The tall figure was moving faster now, its lanky legs covering the ground with an unnerving speed. It wasn't running, more like a relentless loping stride, and the scraping sound was faster, more frantic. Scrape, 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 scrape. I ducked into an alleyway, my back pressing against the cold brick. I held my breath, listening. The scraping grew louder, closer. It was just on the other side of the building. I squeezed my eyes shut, praying it would pass. The sound stopped, right at the entrance of the alley. My heart felt like it was going to explode. This was it. I was going to die in this strange, dead town, killed by a nightmare I couldn't wake up from. And then I woke up. I gasped, sitting bolt upright in my own bed. The sun was streaming through my blinds, casting stripes of light across my room. Leo, my cat, meowed indignantly from where I jostled him on the pillow. The alarm clock read 7:02 a.m. My heart was still racing, my t-shirt soaked in sweat. It was just a dream. A terrifyingly vivid, horrifyingly real-feeling dream. I laughed, a shaky, relieved sound. I swung my legs out of bed, my feet hitting the familiar hardwood floor. I was home, safe. But as I stood up, I felt something under my bare foot. I looked down. There, on my clean bedroom floor, was a small, sharp piece of rusted metal, the size of a large splinter. And on the floor, leading from the bed to the window, were faint, dusty footprints that were not my own. The next few days were a blur of anxiety and self-doubt. I tried to rationalize it. The metal splinter? I must have picked it up somewhere, and it got stuck to my sock. The footprints? Dust from an open window. My mind was playing tricks on me, a byproduct of stress from work. I went to my job as a graphic designer. I met friends for drinks. I tried to live my life, to force normalcy back into the cracks that nightmare had created. But the feeling of being watched lingered. A persistent, prickling sensation on the back of my neck. I would jump at sudden noises. The scrape of a chair on the floor at a coffee shop sent a jolt of ice through my veins. I started to fear sleep. I would stay up late, watching mindless television, anything to keep the encroaching darkness at bay. But exhaustion is a relentless enemy. Eventually, I would succumb. And it happened again. This time, I woke up in a different part of the town. I was inside a school. The smell of chalk dust and old paper hung in the air. I was sitting at a small desk in a classroom, the kind with the chair attached. The blackboard was covered in a frantic scrawl of symbols and equations that made no sense, like the ramblings of a madman. Outside the tall classroom windows, the same twilight sky loomed. The same dead silence. My heart sank. This wasn't a dream. This was real. Somehow, inexplicably, I was being transported to this place in my sleep. A child's drawing was taped to the wall. It depicted a happy family of stick figures under a bright yellow sun. But someone had taken a black crayon and viciously scribbled over the faces and over the sun. And in the corner, a tall, thin figure with long arms had been added. I heard it again, the scrape. This time, it was coming from the hallway. I knew I couldn't just run blindly. I had to be smarter this time. I slid out of the desk, my movements slow and deliberate. I crept to the classroom door, which had a small, wire-reinforced glass window. I peered through. The hallway was long and dark, lined with lockers. At the far end, the tall figure was moving away from me, its rebar leaving a groove in the linoleum floor. It seemed to be searching, methodically opening lockers one by one with a screech of protesting metal. I had a head start. I had to use it. I slipped out of the classroom and ran in the opposite direction. I found a stairwell and scrambled up, my breath catching in my throat. I emerged on the second floor. More classrooms, a library. I needed a place to hide. A good place. The library. The doors were heavy oak. I pushed one open and slipped inside, gently closing it behind me. The library was vast, rows upon rows of bookshelves stretching up to a high ceiling. The air was thick with the scent of aging paper. It felt like a tomb. A safe tomb, I hoped. I needed to understand what was happening. Was I the only one? Had others been here before? The sheer size of the town suggested it once held a population. Where did they all go? I started pulling books from the shelves. Most were what you'd expect in a school library. History textbooks, classic literature, science manuals. All of them were coated in a fine layer of dust. Then I found it. Tucked away in a corner, in a section labeled Local History, was a thin, leather-bound book with no title. It felt different from the others. The leather was worn smooth. I opened it, The pages were filled with handwritten entries, the ink faded in some places, frantic and blotchy in others. It was a journal. The first entry was dated 1958. It was written by a man named Thomas, a teacher at the school. He wrote about his life in the town, which he called Havenwood. He wrote about his wife, Sarah, and his daughter, Emily. It was all so normal. Picnics by the lake, the annual town fair, gossip about the neighbors. But as I read further, the tone of the entries began to change. October 12th, 1962. Strange things are happening. People are having nightmares. The same nightmare, of a tall man who walks the streets at dusk. Old Man Hemlock says he's a spirit of the woods, angered by the new lumber mill. I told him it's just mass hysteria. But I had the dream myself last night. I saw him. He was just standing at the edge of the woods, watching my house. My blood ran cold. October 25th, 1962. It's getting worse. People are disappearing. First, it was just folks from the outskirts, the lumberjacks. Now, little Timmy Gable from down the street is gone. His mother is inconsolable. The sheriff is useless. He thinks they just left town. But their cars are still here. All their belongings are in their homes. People don't just leave everything behind. November 3rd, 1962. We are trapped. The roads out of town, they just loop back. We tried to drive to the next county. After an hour of driving, we ended up right back at the welcome sign for Havenwood. We are in a cage, and the monster is in here with us. A loud crash from downstairs shattered the silence. A locker door being ripped from its hinges. It knew I was in the school. I kept reading, my hands trembling, turning the pages as fast as I could. The entries became more desperate. Thomas wrote about the townspeople trying to fight back. They formed a militia, they set traps, but nothing worked. The creature was too cunning, too strong. It picked them off one by one. November 15th, 1962. It took Sarah. It came in the night. I tried to fight it. I had my shotgun, but it was so fast. Its face, God, I can't describe its face. It was like looking into a void. It didn't kill her. It just took her, dragged her out into the street. I can still hear her screaming. Tears welled in my eyes. Not just for this stranger from the past, but for the shared terror that transcended time. I could feel his despair, his helplessness. The scraping was on the stairs now. It was coming for me. I flipped to the last entry. The handwriting was barely legible, a wild, desperate scrawl. November 21st, 1962. Emily is all I have left. I have to save her. I found something in the old church archives about a ritual, a way to seal the town, to trap the creature. But the price is high. It requires a sacrifice, a life for a life. Not to kill it. You can't kill it, but you can put it to sleep. For a time. But someone must remain. A warden. A dreamer, to keep the dream locked. It's coming for us. I can hear it outside the door. I'm going to the church. I'm going to do the ritual. I will be the warden. I will dream this town into silence to keep my little girl safe. Whoever finds this, if anyone ever does, know that we lived. We loved this town, and we fought. Don't let it wake up. For the love of God, don't let it wake up. The scraping stopped. Right outside the library door, I looked up. The doorknob was slowly, silently turning. I scrambled back, shoving the journal into the waistband of my pajama pants. I had to get out. I scanned the room. A large window at the far end. It was my only chance. I ran, shoving a rolling ladder of books out of my way. I didn't look back. I knew what I would see. A tall, shadowy figure pushing the doors open, its featureless face turning towards me. I threw myself at the window. The glass shattered, a cacophony of noise in the silent world. I fell through, landing hard on a patch of dead grass 2 stories below. The pain was excruciating, a white-hot flash in my ankle. I think I broke it. I pushed myself up, adrenaline overriding the pain. I had to run. I hobbled, half crawling, towards the woods at the edge of the school grounds. The scraping sound started again, this time from the 2nd floor of the library. It was coming after me. I plunged into the darkness of the trees, branches scratching at my face and arms. I didn't know where I was going. I just knew I had to get away. And then, just as I felt a cold presence behind me, a breath on my neck that wasn't the wind, I woke up. I was on my bedroom floor, tangled in my sheets. My ankle was throbbing with a phantom pain. My body was covered in real scratches, angry red lines on my arms and face. And clutched in my hand, its worn leather cool against my skin, was the journal. The journal became my Bible and my curse. I read it over and over, trying to decipher Thomas's final frantic words. A warden, a dreamer to keep the dream locked. It was becoming clear to me. Heavenwood wasn't a real place, not anymore. It was a prison created by a desperate father to trap a monster. And Thomas was the warden, or he had been. For 60 years he had held the creature at bay, dreaming the town into a silent, timeless loop. But something had changed. Maybe his spirit had finally faded. Maybe the seal was weakening. And now, somehow, I had been pulled in. Was I the new warden? Was this my curse now? I stopped going to work. I stopped answering my phone. My world shrank to the four walls of my apartment and the terrifying reality of Havenwood. I couldn't risk falling asleep. I drank coffee until my hands shook. I took caffeine pills. But the body's need for rest is absolute. Each time I woke up in Havenwood, it was a new kind of hell. I would be in the abandoned movie theater, the ghostly faces of old film stars staring down from the torn posters. I would be in the town's hospital, empty gurneys lining the hallways like skeletal remains. And each time, the creature, which the journal called the Stalker, would find me. It was a relentless game of cat and mouse. I learned the town's layout, the best hiding spots, the quickest escape routes. I became a survivor. I learned things about the Stalker, too. It was drawn to noise. It was faster in open spaces, and it seemed to enjoy the hunt. There was a cruel intelligence in its pursuit. It would sometimes let me think I had escaped, only to appear in front of me, cutting off my path. But I had an advantage Thomas and the others didn't. I could wake up, I could escape, but for how long? Each visit left its mark. A new scar on my body, a deeper shadow under my eyes, and I always brought something back with me. A handful of dead leaves from the town square. A shard of glass from the school window. A matchbook from Rosie's diner. My apartment was becoming a museum of a nightmare. One night, I woke up in the church. It was a small, white wooden building with a tall steeple. Inside, dust motes danced in the pale light filtering through a stained glass window. The window depicted a shepherd watching over his flock. A shepherd. A warden. This was where Thomas had made his last stand. I walked to the altar. There were old melted candles and a thick, dust-covered book. The church archives. I opened it. It was filled with the town's history, births, deaths, marriages. But in the back, there were pages written in a language I didn't recognize. Latin, maybe? And diagrams, circles, symbols, a ritual. I heard the scraping sound outside. It was here. It had found me. But this time I didn't run. I was tired of running. I had to understand. I stood my ground, my heart pounding, as the tall, slender figure pushed open the heavy church doors. It stepped inside, its rebar leaving a deep scratch in the wooden floor. For the first time, I got a good look at it. It was even taller up close, its head nearly touching the ceiling. Its body was wrapped in what looked like gray, tattered cloth, like old bandages. But its face? Thomas was right. There was no face. It was a swirling vortex of shadow, a deep, endless blackness that seemed to pull the light out of the room. It was like staring into the abyss. And from that abyss, I felt a wave of pure, unadulterated hunger, not for my flesh, but for my life, my energy, my essence. It wanted to consume my consciousness. It raised its long, thin arm, the one holding the rebar. It took a step towards me. Why? I choked out the word. Why are you hunting me? It stopped. It tilted its head, a gesture that was unnervingly human. And then a voice echoed in my mind, not through my ears, but directly into my thoughts. It was a dry, rasping sound, like dead leaves skittering across pavement. New dreamer. The warden is weak. The dream unravels. Thomas, I whispered. The old dreamer is fading. His world crumbles. I am hungry. What are you? I am the silence, the end of all stories. You are an anchor, a new battery. I will feed on your dreams, your fears, and when you are hollowed out, I will be free. It was a parasite, and Havenwood was its feeding ground. Thomas had trapped it, but in doing so, he had become its sustenance. Now that he was fading, it needed a new host. Me. No, I said, my voice shaking but firm. I won't let you. The stalker took another step. You have no choice. This is your world now, too. It lunged. I dodged to the side, scrambling away from the altar. It was fast, terrifyingly so. The rebar slammed into the wooden altar, splintering the wood. I ran, weaving through the pews. It was right behind me, its long limbs giving it a huge advantage. I knew I couldn't outrun it for long. I had to wake up. That was my only defense. But how? I had never been able to control it. It just happened. I closed my eyes, concentrating, trying to remember my bedroom, the feel of my sheets, the sound of my cat purring, the city lights outside my window. I tried to will myself awake. I felt a searing pain in my shoulder. I cried out, falling to the floor. The stalker had caught me. The tip of the rebar had torn through my shirt and into my flesh. It stood over me, its faceless void looking down. I could feel it drawing something out of me. My energy, my will. I was getting weaker, the world around me starting to feel distant and hazy. Sleep now, dreamer, and feed me. No, this wasn't how it ended. I remembered the journal. Thomas's sacrifice. He gave his life, his consciousness to power the dream. He became the warden. The stalker believed I was the new dreamer, the new battery. But what if I wasn't? What if I could convince it that I wasn't? I had to do something it wouldn't expect a dreamer to do. A dreamer's instinct is to preserve the dream world, to maintain the prison. I looked at the stained glass window, the shepherd, a symbol of the warden. With the last of my strength, I grabbed a fallen candelabra from the floor. It was heavy, made of brass. I pushed myself up, ignoring the pain in my shoulder, and threw it with all my might at the window. The sound of shattering glass was explosive in the silence. The beautiful image of the shepherd, the warden, exploded into 1,000 pieces of colored light. The stalker recoiled, a shriek echoing not in the air, but in my mind, a shriek of pain and confusion. You break the dream. You destroy the prison. You are not the dreamer. The world around me began to destabilize. The edges of the church blurred. The pews flickered in and out of existence. I had damaged the integrity of the dream itself. The stalker looked at me, and for the first time I felt something other than hunger from it. I felt fear. If the dream collapsed, it would be... what? Trapped in nothingness? Unmade? It turned its attention from me to the collapsing world around it. It seemed to be trying to hold it together, its shadowy form pulsating. This was my chance. I crawled towards the broken window, the cool night air of the dream world washing over me. I pulled myself through the jagged opening, cutting my hands on the remaining shards of glass. I fell to the ground outside the church. I didn't look back. I just crawled as fast as I could away from the church, away from the monster that was now fighting to save its own prison. The world was coming apart at the seams. The ground beneath me flickered. The trees warped and twisted. The fabric of this reality was tearing. And in the chaos, as the world of Havenwood dissolved around me, I woke up. I was in my bed. The sun was rising. My shoulder was screaming in pain. I looked down. My t-shirt was torn, and there was a deep, bleeding gash in my shoulder. It was the worst wound I had received so far. Physical proof that I couldn't keep doing this. I couldn't keep surviving these nights. I stumbled into my bathroom, my body aching. I looked in the mirror. I was a ghost, pale, thin, with dark, haunted eyes. My body was a roadmap of scars, new and old. I knew the stalker would be furious. I had challenged it. I had damaged its world. The next time I fell asleep, it wouldn't just be hunting me. It would be trying to annihilate me. But I had also learned its weakness. It was tied to the dream. It needed the prison of Havenwood to exist. And I, it seemed, was not the new warden. I was an anomaly, a bug in the system. And a bug can either be crushed or it can crash the whole program. I looked at the journal lying on my nightstand. Thomas had tried to seal the monster. He had failed in the end. His solution was temporary. I couldn't just seal it. I had to destroy it. And to do that, I had to destroy Havenwood itself. From the inside, I knew it was a suicide mission. If I destroyed the dream while I was in it, I might be destroyed along with it. I might never wake up. But what was the alternative? To live the rest of my life in fear, a prisoner in my own mind, waiting for the night I didn't wake up. To be slowly devoured by a creature of shadow? No, I would not be hunted. I would become the hunter. I spent the next day preparing. I didn't know what I could take with me into the dream, but I knew that objects from that world could come back with me. Maybe, just maybe, it worked the other way around too. I found a small, powerful LED flashlight. I filled a water bottle. I took a multi-tool from my kitchen drawer, and I took a box of matches and a lighter. Thomas wrote that the creature was a spirit of the woods, a thing of shadow. Shadows hate the light, and everything burns. That night, as I sat on my bed, ready for sleep, I wasn't afraid. I was filled with a cold, hard resolve. I held the journal in my hands, a connection to the man who had started this fight 60 years ago. "I'm going to finish it, Thomas," I whispered to the empty room. I closed my eyes and let sleep take me. I woke to the familiar scent of dust and decay, but this time I was ready. I was lying in the middle of Main Street, the single red traffic light casting an eerie glow. My small backpack with my supplies was next to me. It had come with me. A surge of triumph shot through me. The rules could be bent. I didn't wait for the scraping sound. I knew it was coming. I had a plan, a desperate, insane plan. To destroy Havenwood, I needed to destroy its heart. What was the most important place in a town? The place that holds its history, its identity? The town hall. It was a large, imposing brick building at the end of the street, with a clock tower that was frozen at 11:17. The same time I first fell asleep. A coincidence? I doubted it. I ran towards it, my boots slapping against the pavement. The sound was loud, deliberate. I was announcing my presence. I was drawing it out. The scraping sound began, closer than ever before. It was fast, angry. I had made it personal. I reached the town hall and threw my shoulder against the heavy oak doors. They were locked. I used the crowbar on my multi-tool, jamming it into the frame and putting all my weight on it. The wood groaned, splintered, and then burst open. I scrambled inside. The entrance hall was vast and dark. A grand staircase swept up to the second floor. Portraits of forgotten mayors hung on the walls, their eyes seeming to follow me. I could hear the stalker outside, its scraping echoing in the street. It would be here any second. I had to find the town records, the blueprints, the very foundation of this place's existence in the dream. I found a records room on the first floor. It was filled with filing cabinets. I started pulling them open, my flashlight beam cutting through the darkness. Land deeds, birth certificates, town charters, the paper trail of a life that no longer existed. I heard the front doors of the town hall burst open. Heavy, loping footsteps entered the hall. It was inside. I worked faster, my hands shaking. I was looking for something specific, a master plan, a map of the town's layout, the original charter, the symbolic heart. I found it in a locked metal box in the back of the room. Havenwood Founding Charter, 1888. This was it. I grabbed the box and ran. I couldn't go back the way I came. I found a back door that led to a small courtyard. I burst out into the twilight, my lungs heaving. The stalker shrieked in my mind, the sound full of rage. It knew what I had. I ran through the back alleys of Havenwood, the town I now knew as well as my own. I was heading for the old lumber mill at the edge of town, the one mentioned in Thomas's journal, the place that had supposedly angered the spirit in the first place. It seemed a fitting place to end this. The lumber mill was a skeleton of a building, its roof long gone. A giant, rusted circular saw blade sat in the center, a monument to a dead industry. The stalker was close behind. I could hear its unnatural stride, the scrape of its rebar getting louder and louder. I ran into the mill and turned to face my pursuer. It appeared in the doorway, a tall, dark silhouette against the dying light. It paused, its featureless face fixed on me, the box in my hands. "You cannot destroy this world without destroying yourself, dreamer." The voice in my head was a low growl. "It's not a dream," I said, my voice steady. "It's a nightmare, and it's time to wake up." I opened the box. Inside, on yellowed parchment, was the town charter, an ancient document filled with flowing script and the signatures of the town's founders. I took out the lighter. The stalker surged forward, a blur of motion. It was faster than I had ever seen it. I flicked the lighter. The small flame sputtered to life, a beacon of defiance in the gloom. I touched the flame to the corner of the charter. The old, dry parchment caught instantly. The fire spread quickly, eating away at the ink, turning the history of Havenwood to ash. The stalker let out a piercing mental scream. The world around me began to violently shake. The ground cracked. The rusted machinery of the mill groaned and twisted. The stalker wasn't coming for me anymore. It was looking around in panic, its shadowy form flickering, destabilizing. It was being unmade. It turned its void face to me one last time. There was no anger, no hunger, just a chilling, empty despair. "You have doomed us both." The fire consumed the last of the charter, and the world went white. It wasn't a violent explosion. It was a gentle, silent erasure. The lumber mill, the town, the stalker, it all just dissolved into a sea of blinding, peaceful white light. I felt a strange sense of calm. I wasn't scared. I was floating in the quiet nothingness. The fight was over. I had won. I closed my eyes, and I woke up. I opened my eyes to the morning sun in my Chicago apartment. Leo was purring on my chest. The city was alive with its usual morning sounds. I lay still for a long time, just listening, just feeling the reality of it all. The softness of my bed, the warmth of the sun on my skin. I sat up. My body was sore, but when I looked, the scars were gone. The gash in my shoulder, the scratches on my arms, the countless little wounds from my nights in Havenwood, they had all vanished. It was over, for good. I got out of bed and walked to my window. I looked out at the bustling city, the cars, the people, a world of life, a world without the suffocating silence of Havenwood. On my nightstand, the journal was still there, but when I opened it, the pages were blank, all of them. Thomas's story, his pain, his sacrifice, it was gone. His duty was done. He was at peace. I never knew what the stalker truly was. A nature spirit? A tulpa created by the town's collective fear? A demon? In the end, it didn't matter. It was a parasite that fed on life and fear, and I had starved it. I went on with my life. I went back to work. I saw my friends. But I was changed. I carried the memory of Havenwood with me, a ghost in my own mind. Sometimes, in the dead of night, if it's too quiet, I can almost hear a faint, distant scraping sound, a phantom echo. It's a reminder that there are other worlds, other realities just beyond the veil of our own. And sometimes they bleed through. I don't fear sleep anymore, but I respect it. I respect the worlds we build in our minds, the power of our dreams, and the darkness that can sometimes lurk within them. My name is Alex. I was hunted in a town that didn't exist. I fought a monster made of shadows, and I survived. I am the one who woke up, and I will never forget the silence of Havenwood. I will never forget the price of waking up, because sometimes the only way to escape a nightmare is to burn it all down. And you just have to pray that you don't burn down with it.